Darian had always been the kind of man who carried his pain quietly. He was tall, steady, and in control. The type of leader that people trusted, not because he was perfect, but because he never let his problems spill onto others. He was the Alpha King of Crestmore, and for most of his life, that title was enough to keep him moving forward. But 3 years ago, something happened that no title in the world could fix. Her name was Seraphine. She was his true mate, the one person his heart had chosen long before his mind could explain it. She was warm and sharp and completely herself, and when she disappeared one evening without a single word, Darian felt something inside him go very quiet. Not the kind of quiet that is peaceful, the kind of quiet that follows something breaking. He searched for her. Of course he did. He sent people to every corner of the territory. He stayed awake far too many nights going over the same facts again and again, looking for a detail he might have missed. But the weeks turned into months, and the months turned into silence, and eventually the people around him, his advisors, his council, his pack, began to say the words that no one wanted to say out loud. She was gone, and Crestmore still needed a king. The council was not unkind about it. They were simply practical, the way people in power often are when feelings get in the way of decisions. The pack needed a Luna. The borders were growing unstable. Other territories were watching to see if Crestmore would hold. A king without a partner was a symbol of weakness, they said, and Crestmore could not afford weakness. So Darian made a choice he told himself was the right one. He married Cassiel. Cassiel Varn was everything a Luna was supposed to be. She was composed and intelligent and genuinely committed to the role she had stepped into. She came from a respected northern family, and she understood, clearly, before she ever said yes, that she was not Darian's first choice. She had walked into the marriage with her eyes open, and she had decided that she could build something real from honesty and effort, even if it did not begin with the kind of love that sweeps a person off their feet. She was right, in many ways. She built something real. The pack respected her. She managed disputes fairly, listened to everyone who came to her, and carried herself with the kind of dignity that made people feel safe. She worked hard every single day. What she could not build was the part of Darian that had gone quiet. That part stayed closed, no matter what she did. She noticed. She always noticed. But she said nothing about it, because she was afraid that naming it would make it impossible to keep going. And she wanted to keep going. 2 years passed. Crestmore was stable and productive and, by every visible measure, doing well. People were happy. Trade was growing. The pack was peaceful. From the outside, everything looked exactly as it should. Then, on an ordinary morning in late autumn, a patrol returned from the eastern ridge, with news that changed everything. They had found a woman near the border. She was injured and barely able to stand. She had dark hair and silver marks on her wrists. Old marks, the kind that came from a deep bond that had never fully faded. And she had a child with her. A small boy, not yet 3 years old, with serious dark eyes and a stubborn set to his chin. Darian's head of security described the woman to him before he saw her. He already knew who she was before the man finished speaking. Her name was Seraphine. When Darian walked into the healer's room and saw her sitting up in the narrow bed, pale and tired, but completely, unmistakably herself, the room felt like it shifted around him. 3 years of carefully managed silence came undone in an instant. He stood in the doorway and could not move. Seraphine looked at him the way someone looks when they have spent a long time preparing for a moment and have finally arrived inside it. The little boy beside her looked up at him with those serious eyes and said nothing. Seraphine spoke first. She always had. "His name is Casimir," she said. "He is your son, and there is something you need to know about where he comes from." She did not apologize for leaving. She did not fill the silence with explanations right away. She looked at Darian steadily and waited for him to sit down, because what she had to say was not the kind of thing a person should hear standing up. 3 years ago, Seraphine had not left. She had been taken. Just weeks before she disappeared, her elderly grandmother had pressed an old journal into her hands on her deathbed. Inside it, Seraphine found the truth about her own family, a truth that had been carefully hidden for 60 years. She was the last living descendant of the Voss family, the original ruling line of Crestmore. the bloodline that had held power before the Ashvale family rose to lead the pack. For decades, a group of senior council members, led by an old elder named Marin Aldrich, had been quietly erasing every trace of that bloodline. Not through open conflict, but through careful, patient removal. One person at a time, one record at a time. When Seraphine discovered her heritage and made the mistake of trusting the wrong person with what she had found, she was gone within 2 days. Aldrich's people kept her far from Crestmore territory, isolated and cut off. Their plan was to wait until the bond between her and Darien weakened enough that she would no longer matter. What they did not know, when they took her, was that she was already carrying a child. She gave birth alone, in a small house, at the edge of unfamiliar territory, with the help of a woman she had only just met. She named her son Casimir, because the name meant keeper of peace, and she had decided that was what she was going to fight for. For 2 years she stayed hidden, building a small network of people she could trust, lone wolves and quiet dissenters who had their own reasons to distrust Aldrich's counsel. She learned everything she could, she prepared, and when she finally had enough strength and enough support to move, she came back to Crestmore. Not to reclaim Darien, she made that point clearly, looking him in the eye. She came back because Casimir was the son of the Alpha King and the last heir of the Voss bloodline combined, and that made him something that Aldrich could not afford to let live freely. She had run out of safe places to hide her son, and the only truly safe place left was the one place where his father could protect him. Darien sat with all of this for a long moment. Then he stood up, walked out of the room, and called for his most trusted advisor. "I need everything we have on Elder Aldrich," he said. "Every record, every decision he has been part of in the last 20 years, every name connected to him." He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. The people who knew him well understood, from the steadiness of his tone, that something had shifted in him, and that what came next would move fast. What came next did move fast. Within 3 days, Darien had gathered enough evidence, through Seraphine's account, the grandmother's journal, and the testimony of 3 pack members who had witnessed suspicious activity years ago, to call a formal tribunal. Aldrich stood before the assembled pack and defended himself in the calm, measured way of a man who had spent decades believing he was above consequence. He argued that what he had done was for the good of the pack, that 2 royal lines under one roof would create instability, that he had made a difficult decision and stood by it. The pack listened carefully. Then Casimir, sitting in Seraphine's arms at the back of the hall, pointed at the old man and said in a very clear, very certain voice, "Bad man." It was the kind of moment that no council speech can recover from. Aldrich and his 2 closest associates were found guilty. Darien removed their titles and had them permanently exiled from Crestmore. He chose not to go further than that, and he was deliberate about it. This was not a moment for harshness. This was a moment to show his son what justice looked like without cruelty. That evening, he went to Cassiel. She already knew, the way she always seemed to know things before he told her. She was sitting at her desk when he came in, her posture straight, her expression quiet. He told her everything from the beginning. She listened without interrupting him once. When he finished, she was silent for a moment. Then she looked at him and said, "I have known for a long time that you were not fully here with me. I stayed because I chose to, and because I believed in what we were building. But I think we have both known for a while that this was not where either of us was meant to end up." She told him she was releasing him from the marriage. She was not doing it out of bitterness or defeat. She was doing it because she had spent enough time being the reasonable, practical choice, and she wanted something different for herself now. She wanted to be chosen without reservation, by someone who had no one else in the quiet part of their heart. She asked only one thing in return, that she be allowed to stay in Crestmore, not as a former Luna tucked away in some forgotten corner, but as Cassiel Varn, a full and honored member of the pack, in a role she could build for herself. Darien agreed without hesitation. He meant it. The pack, when Cassiel's decision was announced, honored her in the way a community honors someone who gave honestly and asked for nothing dishonest in return. She stood in the full moon gathering a week later and received something she had not expected. Not pity, not awkward silence, but genuine and open respect. She stood tall and received it. Darian and Seraphine did not have a grand ceremony. There was an old Crestmore tradition, older than any of the current politics, where two people simply stood before the pack and acknowledged each other. That was what they did. It was quiet and short and real. Casimir sat on the shoulder of Darian's most trusted advisor and ate someone else's bread roll and seemed entirely unbothered by the whole occasion. The Elder Council was restructured entirely. Younger members were brought in. The history of the Voss bloodline was added back into the official records of Crestmore, where it belonged. Casimir's place in the pack was announced not as a complication, but as something worth celebrating. Proof that even 60 years of careful erasure cannot fully erase the truth. Months passed. The territory settled into a new kind of calm, not the careful, managed calm of before, but something more honest. Darian was different too. Not dramatically, not all at once, but in the small ways that matter. He was present at meals, he laughed more easily, he stopped standing alone in the East Tower at midnight. Seraphine planted a garden on the east side of the pack house. She had wanted one for years and never had the chance. No one told her to. She simply did it, because this was home now, and she intended to treat it like home. By the following spring, visitors to Crestmore would often remark on it. Someone would ask what the place felt like, and the answer was always some version of the same thing. Warm, they said, like somewhere people actually wanted to be. And it was.